welcome back. Today we're exploring the Isle of Arran, often called Scotland in miniature. Our journey begins here in Brodick Bay. Along the way we'll visit castles, prehistoric tombs, waterfalls, the Holy Isle and some of the island's oldest stories. But Brodick has not always stood where it does today. The old village once stood beside the castle. This is Brodick Castle. Much of what we see today was shaped in the 19th century, but beneath it lies a far older stronghold, standing above the bay since at least the medieval period. Over the centuries, it was attacked, burned, occupied, and repeatedly rebuilt, so often that one historian compared it to a phoenix rising again from its ruins. Its position made it a valuable prize. Brodick guarded one of Arran's main landing places, and the name itself is thought to come from the Old Norse Breiðvík, meaning Broad Bay, a reminder of the centuries when the island lay within the Norse world. After Norse rule ended, the castle passed into Scottish hands. By the late 15th century, Brodick had come into the possession of the Hamilton family. James Hamilton became Earl of Arran in 1503. The castle was rebuilt as a tower house around 1510. From here, the Hamiltons controlled much of the island, with Brodick serving as both a stronghold and the centre of their Arran estate. But the rebuilding did not end its violent history. The castle was destroyed again during the Rough Wooing in 1544, fought over during the civil wars of the 17th century, and occupied by parliamentary soldiers in 1652. An artillery battery was added to defend the Firth of Clyde, because whoever held Brodick Castle could effectively control Arran. In later years, Brodick became more of a hunting retreat than a fortress. Then in 1844, William Hamilton, later the 11th Duke, and his wife, Princess Marie of Baden, began transforming it into a grand family residence. The architect James Gillespie Graham greatly enlarged and remodelled the building, creating much of the castle we see today. But parts of the older stronghold may still remain hidden beneath the grounds. Local tradition tells of a secret tunnel running from the castle towards the shoreline. A geophysical survey searched for signs of the passage, but no tunnel had ever been conclusively identified. Archaeologists did, however, uncover the edge of the castle's enormous buried defensive ditch, which may have once measured at least 20 metres across. Some of the artworks and objects inside Brodick Castle once belonged to William Beckford. His daughter Susan married Alexander Hamilton, later the 10th Duke of Hamilton, in 1810, and through that marriage, part of Beckford's extraordinary collection eventually came to Arran. Beckford's wealth had a dark foundation. Much of it came from Jamaican sugar plantations worked by enslaved people. One of his ancestors owned 24 plantations and around 1,200 enslaved people. That fortune financed Beckford's vast collections of paintings, books and unusual objects, some of which are now preserved here in Brodick Castle. His secluded lifestyle also inspired darker rumours. It was claimed that he surrounded himself with dwarves and performed magical incantations and blasphemous ceremonies behind the walls of his estate. In reality, he appears to have employed only one man of short stature, known as Piero or Pero, who remained with him for many years. Beckford received an unusually artistic education, and as a child even had music lessons from the young Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. But he is now best remembered as the author of Vathek, a Gothic tale of astrology, forbidden knowledge, and damnation. The novel follows Vathek, a powerful caliph, consumed by curiosity and ambition. Beckford writes that he wished to know everything, even sciences that did not exist. Vathek builds an enormous tower from which to study the heavens. The story is filled with magical talismans, hidden treasures, and what Beckford calls astrolabes and instruments of magic. An astrolabe is an ancient astronomical instrument used to map the stars and represent the celestial sphere. But Vathek's search for forbidden knowledge eventually draws him beneath the earth into the infernal halls of Eblis. Through the paintings, books, and strange objects now preserved at Brodick, part of Beckford's own imaginative world still survives inside the castle. This is Bruce's room, one of the smallest rooms in Brodick Castle. Despite the name, there is no evidence that Robert the Bruce ever stayed here. We'll have a quick look at the old wine cellar before heading back out through the gardens to the Red Squirrel Hide. Arran is one of Scotland's most important refuges for the native red squirrel, partly because grey squirrels have never become established on the island. Brodick's Hide stands in a secluded grotto-like part of the woodland, where visitors can watch the squirrels feeding and moving through the trees. And because Arran remained under Norse control for centuries, there is a fitting mythological connection. In Norse mythology, the universe was centred on Yggdrasil, an immense ash tree whose branches and roots extended through the different worlds. A squirrel named Ratatoskr runs continuously up and down Yggdrasil, carrying words, and in the later prose Edda, malicious gossip, between the eagle perched in its highest branches and the serpent Nithog, which gnaws at the tree from below. Humanity was believed to inhabit Midgard. The other worlds are commonly listed as Asgard, home of the Aesir gods, Vanaheim, home of the Vanir gods, Alfheim, the realm of the elves, Jotunheim, the land of the giants, Nithavalir, or Svartalfheim, associated with dwarves and dark elves, Niflheim, the world of mist and ice, Muspelheim, the world of fire, and Hell, the realm of many of the dead. This 12-sided Bavarian summerhouse was built in 1845 as a wedding present for Princess Marie of Baden. It is the only survivor of 4 summer houses once placed along the castle's romantic woodland walks. Built into a sandstone rock face overlooking Brodick Bay, its original ceiling is decorated with pine cones, while the outside is covered with intertwined rhododendron stems. Nearby, the walled garden is much older. It was created in 1710 as the castle's kitchen garden and was later used to raise young trees. During the 19th century, it was transformed into an ornamental garden. From here, we leave Brodick Castle behind, but the island still has more to reveal. This is Holy Isle. rising from the sheltered waters of Lamlash Bay. Its sacred history reaches back to Saint Mallasha, an early Christian hermit associated with the island in the 6th or 7th century. Holy Isle was once known as Ellen Mallasha, Mallasha's Island, and that name eventually became Lamlash. Mallasha is said to have lived in a shallow cave above the shore. On the island are his holy well and the carved rock known as the Judgment Stone. The well was believed to have healing powers. Tradition also linked Mallasha with Shishkin, where he was said to tend the sick and claimed that he lived to the age of 120. He was associated with a green healing stone that supposedly moved away from a patient who was not going to survive. Another shelter, later called the Smuggler's Cave, contains carved crosses, suggesting that the other hermits may also have sought isolation here. Centuries later, Norse visitors carved their names inside Mallasha's cell. The most remarkable inscription reads, Viglikar, the king's marshal, cut the runes. Viglikar served King Håkon of Norway, whose fleet sheltered in Lamlash Bay in 1263, shortly before the Battle of Largs. A medieval monastery was later established on the island, traditionally by Reginald, son of Somerled. By the end of the 16th century, it was already ruined, but Holy Isle remained a burial place for the people of Arran. Above Whiting Bay, the Glen Ashdale burn drops through the trees in a dramatic double waterfall. The older name, Gleneasdale, means Glen of the Waterfall, so before anything else, this place is defined by water. Near the falls, hidden by the trees, are the remains of Glen Ashdale Fort. Its stone wall once curved out from the edge of the ravine, enclosing a small site above the burn. In places, the wall still stood over 5 feet high when it was recorded in the 1910 Book of Arran. The fort is not securely dated, but it belongs to Arran's older prehistoric landscape, the kind of site often described as Iron Age. Traces of iron working were also found close by, including waste left behind when iron ore was heated and worked into usable metal, along with a larger smelting site a few yards away on the bank of a small stream. So we call it a fort, but that word may hide more than it explains. It may have offered defence, but it may also have marked a working or controlled place, or somewhere important in the landscape. Near the waterfall, this was stone, water, fire, and metal. We now make our way to the giants' graves. These are the remains of 2 Neolithic chambered tombs, built more than 5,000 years ago, long before the fort, the Saints, or the Norse arrived on Arran. Today the exposed stones resemble open trenches, but the chambers were originally roofed and buried beneath long mounds of stone known as cairns. These are the largest surviving structures of its kind on the island. Its original mound measured around 98 feet long and 60 feet wide, with a narrow entrance leading into a chamber built from enormous slabs. When the chamber was excavated in 1902, archaeologists discovered black earth, charcoal, and deposits of burnt human bone. They also recovered 4 leaf-shaped arrowheads, 3 large flint scrapers, and fragments of pottery decorated with chevrons and crossed lines. Much of both cairns was removed or robbed over the centuries, leaving mainly their inner stone chambers. They stand high above Whiting Bay, looking out over the sea and the surrounding landscape. We do not know what these people called this place, what ceremonies were performed here, or what they believed happened after death, but the name Giant's Graves preserves the later sense that structures this ancient, built from stones this large, must have belonged to a world greater than our own. Hidden nearby, next to a small hydroelectric power station, this glen exposes layers of red and grey rock, with a fault line cutting through the landscape. Whatever age we assign to them, the scene is a reminder that the earth beneath us has been broken, shifted, and reshaped by forces far beyond human control. We now make our way to Esmore, Gaelic for big waterfall. Here, the Outmore leaves the forest and plunges in a single narrow fall into the deep ravine below. The sound of the water fills the ravine, and it continues to cut through the rock and feed the woodland beneath it, a reminder of the power placed within creation. A short distance from Esmore stands one of Arran's most unusual attractions, the library. It was created by Albert Holmes and a friend more than 20 years ago, using timber from around 300 trees brought down during a storm. The original purpose was simple: to teach visitors about the forest, wildlife, and ecology. Paper and pencils were left inside, and over time the building became something more. Its walls are now covered with layers of poems, drawings, messages, and memorials left by visitors from around the world. What began as a quiet shelter in the trees now attracts thousands of people each year. But it still feels like a place shaped by the woodland around it. Down at Kildonan Beach, the view opens south across the Firth of Clyde. Above the shore stands the ruins of Kildonan Castle, a small coastal stronghold probably built sometime between 1300 and 1500. Older writers believed it may have served as a watchtower, warning Arran of ships approaching from the south. Just offshore lies Plada. Its name comes from the Old Norse flati, meaning flat island. Another reminder of Arran's centuries under Norse influence. Medieval records also associated it with Saint Blaise, an early Christian martyr Its lighthouse was first lit in 1790, making it one of the earliest established around Scotland's western coast. Farther out rises Ailsa Craig, long nicknamed Paddy's Milestone, because it lies roughly halfway along the sea route between Glasgow and Belfast. Its rare granite has been quarried for curling stones since the 19th century and has supplied many of the stones used in competitions around the world. From this beach, 3 different layers of the Clyde come together: the ruined stronghold of Kildonnan, the Norse and saintly history of Pladda, and the distant rock of Ailsa Craig. Looking out across the water, Arran's long history seems to gather into a single view. And this marks the end of our journey here today. Thanks for watching this episode of Kirks and Crowns. We'll see you next time.